In the shadowed backstreets of Australia's cities, where neon signs flicker over empty highways and the law never truly sleeps, two names have echoed for decades with equal parts fear and fascination: the Rebels Motorcycle Club and the Comanchero Motorcycle Club. To outsiders, they are headlines, mugshots, and courtroom sketches. To those inside the outlaw world, they are brotherhoods, tight, uncompromising, and bound by a loyalty that often outweighs life itself. This is not a simple story of good and evil. It is a story of power, pride, territory, and survival. A story of men who chose the road over the rules, and of a rivalry that helped define Australia's modern biker wars. The roots of the outlaw culture in Australia. To understand the conflict between the rebels and the Comancheros, you first have to understand the culture that birthed them. After World War II, motorcycle clubs began forming across Australia, inspired by returning soldiers, American biker films, and a growing sense of rebellion against conformity. These early clubs were not criminal organizations. They were social groups, bonded by machines, speed, and freedom. But as decades passed, some clubs evolved. The influence of American outlaw motorcycle clubs, particularly those that openly rejected mainstream society, began to shape Australian biker culture. Patches became symbols of identity. Clubhouses became sacred ground. Loyalty became non-negotiable. By the late 1960s, the line between social club and outlaw organization had begun to blur. The rise of the Comanchero Motorcycle Club. The Comanchero Motorcycle Club was founded in 1968 by William "Jock" Ross, a man who would later become one of the most influential figures in Australian biker history. Ross envisioned a club that mirrored the discipline and strength of the American outlaw model, but with a uniquely Australian identity. From the beginning, the Comancheros emphasized hierarchy, obedience, and unity. Orders flowed from the top down. Disobedience was met with swift consequences. This rigid structure allowed the club to grow quickly and maintain internal control. Throughout the 1970s and 1980s, the Comancheros expanded across New South Wales and beyond. Their patch became synonymous with intimidation and respect. Rivals knew better than to cross them lightly. Law enforcement began to recognize them not just as bikers, but as an organized force. The Comancheros were not just building a club, they were building an empire. The birth and expansion of the Rebels Motorcycle Club. The Rebels Motorcycle Club emerged in the early 1970s, initially forming in Melbourne. While they shared the outlaw ethos, their internal culture differed from the Comancheros. The Rebels valued independence and local chapter autonomy, allowing chapters greater control over their own operations. This flexibility proved to be a powerful advantage. Throughout the 1980s and 1990s, the Rebels expanded at a staggering pace. New chapters appeared across Victoria, South Australia, Western Australia, and eventually New South Wales. Unlike some clubs that grew cautiously, the Rebels moved aggressively, recruiting widely and establishing clubhouses in strategic locations. Their rapid growth earned them both admiration and enemies. By the late 1990s, the Rebels were no longer an emerging force. They were one of the largest outlaw motorcycle clubs in Australia. Two philosophies, one road. At their core, the Rebels and Comancheros represented two different philosophies of power. The Comancheros believed in centralized authority. Strength came from unity and discipline. Every member was expected to fall in line, to represent the club in a controlled and calculated way. The Rebels believed in expansion and adaptability. Their decentralized structure allowed chapters to respond quickly to local conditions, forming alliances and asserting dominance without waiting for permission from above. These differences shaped how each club operated and how they fought. Where the Comancheros favored decisive, overwhelming shows of force, the Rebels relied on presence. More members, more chapters, more territory. Collision was inevitable. Territory, the currency of the outlaw world. In the outlaw motorcycle underworld, Territory is everything. It dictates influence, revenue streams, and reputation. Control of an area often means control of drug distribution, security work, extortion, and underground economies that rarely make it into public view. New South Wales became the primary battleground. For the Comancheros, it was sacred ground, their heartland. For the rebels, it was an opportunity too valuable to ignore. As rebels chapters began appearing closer to established Comanchero territory, tensions rose. Clubhouses were established within striking distance. Members crossed paths at pubs, bike shows, and industrial areas. What began as quiet intimidation soon escalated. Respect, disrespect, and the sacred patch. In biker culture, respect is not abstract. It is enforced. A look held too long, a comment overheard, a patch worn in the wrong place can all be interpreted as acts of aggression. Colors, the patches worn on a biker's back, are sacred. They represent the club, its history, and the blood spilled to defend it. To touch another man's colors without permission is an unforgivable insult. Both the rebels and the Comancheros enforced strict rules regarding conduct, loyalty, and representation. Violations were punished internally. External disrespect demanded retaliation. As encounters between the two clubs increased, so did the number of perceived slights. Each demanded a response. Each response escalated the conflict. The slow burn to open conflict. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, the rivalry was no longer quiet. Assaults, drive-bys, and violent confrontations began to surface. Firearms increasingly replaced fists. Every incident carried weight. Failure to respond was seen as weakness. Weakness invited further aggression. Law enforcement agencies began tracking the escalation closely. Intelligence units monitored club movements. Surveillance increased. Raids became more frequent, but pressure from police often strengthened internal bonds. Members closed ranks. Paranoia grew. The world narrowed to brothers and enemies. The airport brawl and its aftershocks. In 2009, violence between outlaw motorcycle clubs erupted into public view during the infamous Sydney airport brawl. While the immediate confrontation involved the bandidos, its impact rippled through the entire biker world, including the rebels and the Comancheros. The spectacle shocked the nation. Images of armed bikers in a civilian airport forced politicians and police to act. New anti-association laws were introduced. Clubhouses were targeted. Members were arrested not just for crimes, but for gathering. For the rebels and Comancheros, the rules of engagement changed overnight. War under pressure. With law enforcement watching closely, open warfare became risky. Violence did not stop. It became strategic. Meetings moved underground. Communications were coded. Public visibility decreased. Some chapters went quiet, while others quietly expanded. The rebels focused heavily on international growth, establishing chapters across Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. Global reach became a form of protection and prestige. The Comancheros doubled down on internal discipline, reinforcing loyalty and tightening command structures. The rivalry fractured into localized conflicts, shaped by personalities, vendettas, and shifting alliances. Media, myth, and reality. Media portrayals often reduced the conflict to simple criminal narratives. Sensational headlines sold fear. Complex social dynamics were ignored. For many members, the club offered identity, structure, and belonging, often to men who felt alienated from mainstream society. Law enforcement saw organized crime. Members saw brotherhood under siege. The truth existed somewhere between those extremes. Internal costs. Behind the patches and power struggles were real consequences. Families were strained. Prison sentences mounted. Deaths left unanswered questions. Some members walked away. Others doubled down, convinced there was no life beyond the club. The war was not just fought on the streets. It was fought in courtrooms, prison yards, and living rooms across Australia. Where things stand today. Today, the Rebels MC and Comancheros MC remain dominant forces within Australia's outlaw motorcycle landscape. In some regions, uneasy coexistence has replaced open hostility. In others, tensions remain unresolved. The colors still command respect. The codes are still enforced. The memory of past violence still shapes decisions. This is not a war with a clean ending. It is a conflict that adapts, pauses, and resurfaces. The story of the Rebels MC versus the Comancheros MC is ultimately a story about identity and power, about how men form bonds, defend territory, and respond to pressure from rivals and the state. It is a reminder that outlaw motorcycle clubs are not just criminal entities or cultural myths. They are living organizations shaped by history, loyalty, and conflict. As long as there are roads to ride and colors to defend, the echoes of this rivalry will continue to rumble through Australia's underworld, low, constant, and never fully silenced. Prison, power, and influence. As law enforcement pressure intensified, prisons became a secondary battlefield. Incarcerated members did not leave the war behind, they carried it inside. Correctional facilities across Australia evolved into microcosms of the biker world, where alliances mattered and reputations followed inmates through the gates. Senior members from both the Rebels and the Comancheros exerted influence behind bars, using prison hierarchies to maintain control, relay messages, and enforce discipline. Younger members learned quickly that incarceration was not a pause in club life, it was a test of loyalty. Violence inside prisons was often quieter but no less dangerous. A single altercation could trigger consequences on the outside, reinforcing the idea that the club was everywhere. The psychology of brotherhood. To understand why the conflict endured for decades, one must look beyond crime and territory and examine psychology. Outlaw motorcycle clubs are built on an intense form of belonging. Members are not simply friends. They are brothers bound by ritual, sacrifice, and shared risk. For many recruits, the club filled a void left by fractured families, failed institutions, or a sense of alienation from mainstream society. Prospecting periods tested endurance and obedience, breaking down individual identity and rebuilding it around the club. Once accepted, leaving was no simple matter. Walking away meant losing protection, identity, and often personal safety. This psychological lock-in ensured that conflicts, once started, were sustained by loyalty rather than logic. Initiation, prospecting, and internal discipline. Before earning full colors, prospects endured long periods of testing. They were required to prove loyalty, resilience, and willingness to follow orders without question. This process hardened members and filtered out those unwilling to commit fully. Internal discipline was harsh. Punishments ranged from fines and demotions to violent retribution. These internal systems ensured cohesion but also normalized violence as a tool of problem-solving. For both the Rebels and the Comancheros, discipline was not cruelty, it was survival. Weapons, tactics, and intimidation. The evolution of the conflict saw a shift in tactics. Early confrontations relied on fists, chains, and knives. As stakes rose, firearms became more common. Intimidation was often strategic rather than spontaneous. Drive-bys, arson attacks on clubhouses, and public confrontations were designed to send messages without triggering full-scale crackdowns. Every act carried symbolism. Violence was communication. Women on the periphery. Women occupied a complex and often misunderstood role within the biker world. While not members, they were deeply affected by club life. Partners were expected to show loyalty to the club above all else. Some found community and protection. Others experienced isolation and fear. Their stories, rarely told, form an unspoken backdrop to the rivalry. Defections, informants, and betrayal. Nothing threatened the clubs more than betrayal. Members who cooperated with law enforcement were viewed as the ultimate enemies. Defections fueled paranoia. Background checks intensified. Trust became currency. Each informant not only endangered operations but shattered the myth of absolute loyalty. Courtrooms as battlefields. Trials became spectacles. Members appeared in colors despite legal pressure, turning courtrooms into stages of defiance. Legal victories were celebrated as proof of resilience. Convictions were reframed as sacrifices for the club. The justice system became another arena in the war. The role of media narratives. Documentaries, news reports, and tabloid stories shaped public perception. Clubs learned to exploit and avoid media attention strategically. Reputation management became as important as street presence. Internal power struggles. Leadership transitions were rarely smooth. Ambition, ego, and fear created internal fractures. Power struggles weakened chapters and sometimes spilled into external violence. The greatest threats were often internal: decline, transformation, or persistence. Observers have long predicted the end of outlaw motorcycle clubs. Yet they persist by adapting. Whether through reduced visibility, internationalization, or generational change, both clubs continue to evolve. Legacy of the rivalry. The Rebels MC versus Comancheros MC rivalry reshaped Australia's outlaw landscape. It influenced legislation, policing, and the culture of motorcycle clubs nationwide. Its legacy is measured not only in violence, but in how deeply it altered the underground world it came from. The history of the Comancheros and the Rebels Motorcycle Clubs, OMCGs, is a cornerstone of Australian true crime and gangland history. Their stories have been extensively documented in investigative series like 60 Minutes Australia, 7 News Spotlight, and the dramatized miniseries Bikie Wars, Brothers in Arms. The foundational identities of these two clubs are distinct, rooted in the late 1960s and early 1970s. The Comanchero MC, founded 1968 in Sydney, Australia. Founder, William George Jock Ross, a Scottish immigrant. The name, Ross named the club after the John Wayne film The Comancheros. The Supreme Commander, Ross ran the club with a militaristic, authoritarian structure. He mandated weekly paramilitary drills, marching, and combat training, which many members eventually resented. The Rebels MC, founded 1969 in Brisbane, originally as the Confederates. Key figure, Alex Vella, a Maltese-born boxer, became the most recognizable face of the club, serving as national president for decades. Scope, at its peak, the Rebels became Australia's largest club, with over 70 chapters and 1,000+ members. Unlike the Comancheros' rigid hierarchy, the Rebels grew through a massive franchise-style expansion. The defining conflict, the Milperra Massacre, 1984. While the Rebels and Comancheros have a long-standing rivalry, the most infamous event in Bikie War history involves the Comancheros and their breakaway group, the Bandidos. This event set the stage for how all Australian clubs, including the Rebels, would be policed for the next 40 years. The breakdown. The split. In 1983, internal friction caused a massive rift in the Comancheros. Anthony "Snotty" Spencer led a group that broke away from Jock Ross's Western chapter to form the first Australian chapter of the American Bandidos MC. The date, September 2, 1984, Father's Day. The location, the car park of the Viking Tavern in Milperra, Sydney. The event, what was supposed to be a swap meet, turned into a battlefield. 19 Comancheros and 34 Bandidos engaged in a shootout and brawl involving shotguns, rifles, and machetes. The toll, *7 dead, 4 Comancheros, 2 Bandidos, and Leanne Walters, a 14-year-old innocent bystander. 28 wounded, many suffered lifelong injuries. Legal aftermath, Jock Ross was sentenced to life in prison, later reduced. He served 5 years and 3 months. The trial was one of the largest in NSW history. 3. The modern era, Comancheros versus Rebels. Since the early 2000s, the rivalry between the Comancheros and the Rebels has been driven by territorial dominance and control over the illicit narcotics trade, specifically methamphetamine. Key conflicts and tensions. Territorial disputes. The Rebels traditionally held a quantity advantage, While the Comancheros maintained a reputation for high-level violence and quality recruitment, often pulling from Middle Eastern organized crime circles in Sydney's west. The 2013 present conflict. Authorities have documented an ongoing conflict between the two groups characterized by firebombings, drive-by shootings, and patchovers when a member forcibly or voluntarily switches clubs. International expansion. Both clubs have expanded into New Zealand and Southeast Asia, particularly Thailand and Cambodia, leading to international law enforcement crackdowns like Operation Avon and Operation Trojan Shield. Policing and legislation. Documentaries frequently highlight how these gangs forced the Australian government to create some of the world's toughest anti-bikie laws. Consorting laws. In many Australian states, it is illegal for convicted felons, which includes many patched members, to communicate or meet in public. The 501 deportations. Australian law allows for the deportation of non-citizens on character grounds. This has resulted in hundreds of rebels and Comancheros being deported to New Zealand, the 501s, inadvertently exporting the bikie war to Christchurch and Auckland. Digital surveillance. The dismantling of the Anum encrypted app, Operation Trojan Shield, revealed that members of both clubs were coordinating massive drug shipments, leading to hundreds of arrests in 2021. The fascination with the Comanchero/rebel rivalry has birthed a specific genre of Australian media. Bikie Wars, Brothers in Arms, a 6-part miniseries that focuses on the 1984 Milperra Massacre. It is praised for its historical accuracy regarding the personalities of Jock Ross and Snotty Spencer. Underbelly series. Various seasons of this true crime anthology feature the rise of modern bikie figures and their clashes with traditional crime families. While the 1984 Milperra Massacre defined the club's 20th century history, the 21st century saw a shift toward Nike bikies, younger, often Middle Eastern members who prioritize profit and street muscle over the traditional Harley-Davidson culture. The rise and fall of Mick Howie, Comancheros. Mick Howie is perhaps the most pivotal figure in modern Australian bikie history. The coup. At just 22 years old, Howie led a younger faction to the home of the Supreme Commander, Jock Ross. In a brutal changing of the guard, they beat Ross, took his colors, and Howie declared himself the new national president. The Sydney Airport Brawl, 2009. This event is a central theme in documentaries about gang evolution. On March 22, 2009, Howie and Hells Angels leader Derek Wayno, who were on the same flight from Melbourne to Sydney. Upon landing, a massive brawl involving 15 men broke out in Terminal 3. Anthony Zervis, brother of a Hells Angel, was bludgeoned to death with a 17 kilograms metal bollard in front of horrified travelers. The assassination. In 2018, while sitting in his luxury SUV outside a Fitness First gym in Rockdale, Howie was shot multiple times in a professional hit. His death left a power vacuum that led to years of retaliatory violence. The Rebels, a kingdom in exile. For decades, Alex Vella, the Maltese Falcon, maintained the Rebels as the largest club in Australia. Unlike the Comancheros, who were often embroiled in internal coups, Vella ran the Rebels as a stable, massive franchise. The visa exile strategy. In 2014, the Australian government used a non-citizen loophole to cripple the rebels. While Vella was visiting family in Malta, the immigration minister cancelled his visa on character grounds, Section 501 of the Migration Act. Impact. Vella, who had lived in Australia for 46 years, was stranded in Malta. Documentaries highlight his digital presidency, where he still communicates with the club via social media, but without his physical presence, the rebels' dominance began to fragment. Internal splits. In the absence of Vella, several rebel chapters patched over to other clubs or became embroiled in a bloody war with the Rock Machine MC in Perth. The 2021 tipping point, Operation Trojan Shield. If the 1984 massacre was the first major blow to bikies, Operation Trojan Shield, then, was the knockout. The sting. The FBI and Australian Federal Police, AFP, ran a fake encrypted messaging app called Anum. Comancheros and rebels used this app to coordinate drug shipments and contract killings, believing it was secure. The reveal. In June 2021, police raided hundreds of properties. In Australia alone, 224 people were arrested. Mark Buttle's shadow, Comanchero boss Mark Buttle, who fled to Turkey, was revealed as a primary target. The app showed how the Comancheros had essentially become a logistics company for cocaine and meth, moving goods from South America into Australian ports. The Comanchero Commission. The Comancheros have been documented using a commission system, a revolving door of leaders where no one person holds the title for too long to avoid police targeting. They have a reputation for recruiting soldiers from street gangs who have no interest in motorcycles but provide muscle for drug turf wars. The Rebels franchise. The Rebels grew by allowing anyone with a Harley-Davidson to start a chapter, provided they paid fees to the mother chapter. This led to their massive size but also made them harder to control. Documentaries often show the Rebels' charity rides as a PR effort to counter their criminal reputation. The Hells Angels Motorcycle Club is one of the most famous groups and easily the largest motorcycle club in the world, with a membership of over 6,467 chapters in 59 different countries. You might be wondering what makes this motorcycle club so special. Well, there are several reasons why anyone would want to join the Hells Angels. While a love of motorcycles is easily one of the most common motives, a sense of belonging, especially in an infamous club once shrouded in an aura of mystery and respect, is another. From a distance, the Hells Angels seem so cool, and it's easy for many to be enticed into wanting to join. However, joining this club isn't for the faint-hearted. Since many do not make the cut, becoming a full member of the Hells Angels can take a really long time, sometimes spanning years. To become a member of the Hells Angels, candidates are first expected to be true motorcycle enthusiasts. They must also own a valid driver's license and a motorcycle of over 750 cubic centimeters, as the average member is expected to ride at least 20,000 kilometers a year in strict formation. Candidates are also required to drive US-built motorcycles, with Harley-Davidson, Indian, and Victory being the most common brands. Prospective members who have applied to be law enforcement officers, such as prison guards or police, are excluded from the club. Child molesters are also not allowed. The initiation process starts with the candidate passing the above criteria. Once that is out of the way, the candidate, now considered a prospective member, enters the stage of being deemed a hang-around. As a hang-around, prospective members are invited to meet older club members at some club meetings, and this stage could last for a long time. If the hang-around still shows interest at this stage, they are then deemed an associate. They remain classified this way for a year or two. After these years pass, an associate is reclassified as a prospect and is now allowed to fully participate in some of the club's activities. However, they do not have voting privileges since the initiation process is still underway. If the prospect proves they have what it takes, they are then upgraded to full membership or full patch, which is the last phase of the initiation process. The full patch refers to the club's four-piece insignia given to its members. This includes the Death Head logo, two rockers, a top rocker with the words Hells Angels, and a bottom rocker showing the country, state, or charter location. Rectangular MC patch beneath the wings of the Death Head signifies Motorcycle Club. Prospects are only allowed to wear the bottom rocker along with the MC patch. The final stage of becoming a full member begins with the voting process. A prospect can only become a full member or full patch when they are unanimously voted in by all full members of the club. Hence, a prospect is often required to travel across chapters in their country and introduce themselves to other members. Voting becomes easier once these members have gotten to know the prospect and have vetted them. The prospect must receive 100% of the votes, as a single vote against them means the prospecting stage continues until they are fully voted in. Once they have been voted in, prospects are required to reaffirm their loyalty to the club, and the Hells Angels rocker is finally awarded to them as the final part of the initiation ceremony. At this stage, known as being patched, prospects become full members. Full members of the Hells Angels are recognized by their infamous insignia, the full patch, but this remains the property of the club, not the member, even after the initiation process. The club's official colors are red lettering on a white background, leading to the nickname, the Red and White. Members wear their patches on leather or denim jackets and vests. Some members wear an AFFA patch, meaning Angels Forever, Forever Angels, indicating lifelong membership. Another patch consists of two Nazi-style SS lightning bolts beneath the words, Filthy Few, worn by select members. According to the club, this patch is a type of merit badge awarded to members who are first to arrive at and last to leave a party. However, some law enforcement officers allege that this patch is worn by members who have committed or are willing to commit murder on behalf of the club. In some cases, members may wear patches that signify their rank within the organization. These small, rectangular patches display the titles of the members in red letters on a white background. Common titles include President, Sergeant-at-Arms, Treasurer, Vice President, and more. If a member is ejected from the club or chooses to leave, they are required to return their patches to the club. Members are expected to pay dues that finance burials and motorcycle runs. Attendance at club meetings and motorcycle runs is also mandatory. Contrary to popular belief, most Hells Angels members are not drug addicts. The club prohibits intravenous drug use, and many members are known to be fitness enthusiasts. According to Jay Dobbins, an investigative agent who went undercover and infiltrated the Hells Angels from 2001 to 2003, the club has strict rules concerning interactions with women. Wives or girlfriends of members are strictly off-limits, and violations of this rule are met with severe, often violent, consequences. Dobbins also mentioned that members are not allowed to speak to one another while wearing sunglasses. Additionally, members must remove their riding gloves before shaking hands. Prospects are forbidden from patting a member's back or touching the Hells Angels patch, with severe consequences for breaking this rule. Those who leave the club on bad terms have all possessions related to the club taken away from them, including the removal of tattoos that indicate club affiliation. Prospects, along with members' girlfriends and wives, are allowed to wear the number 81, which stands for Support 81, with 8 representing H and 1 representing. The Hells Angels do not have an overall president. Instead, the club is governed by regional officers representing localized chapters at monthly meetings. These chapters have a degree of autonomy regarding minor policy changes and member discipline. Rankings in the club's organization include president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, sergeant-at-arms, and road captain, each carrying out significant duties. Responsibilities within their chapters vary, and regional officers are divided into two groups. The first group comprises those who attend the West Coast Officers Meeting, also known as WESCOM. The Westcom group is charged with conducting the policy actions and affairs of the Hells Angels chapters in the western United States. The second group includes those who attend the East Coast Officers Meeting, or ECOM, which governs the chapters in the eastern United States. Although the Hells Angels' founding location was in San Bernardino, California, its unofficial founding location eventually moved to Oakland, California, under the leadership of Sonny Barger, who succeeded Otto Friedli as the de facto national president. This shift made the Oakland chapter one of the most prominent and regarded as first among equals, due to Barger's reputation. The Oakland chapter has the largest membership of any chapter in the United States and is responsible for major decision-making within the club. Any other motorcycle club wishing to be affiliated with the Hells Angels must first apply to the Oakland chapter for membership and be monitored and approved by them before being granted membership. The Hells Angels' traditional motto is Angels Forever, Forever Angels. They also have other slogans such as, When we do right, nobody remembers. When we do wrong, nobody forgets. 3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead, and when in doubt, knock them out. The latter coined by New York City chapter member Vincent "Big Vinny" Girolamo. Joining the Hells Angels is far from easy. Prospective members often spend years on a wait list and devote their remaining years as full members to the club. The Hells Angels are not a casual, recreational group. For many members, joining is one of the best experiences of their lives, but leaving the club is a different matter altogether. Members can only leave if they are expelled, as there is no concept of retirement, except in rare cases where certain members are allowed to depart. Still, some have taken the daring step to leave. One notable example is George Christie. "I felt we became the people we rebelled against, and that's exactly what I told them at the meeting when I left," Christie said. "At one time, we would interact with all the clubs up and down the coast, and by 2011 we were fighting every major outlaw bike club in the United States, plus law enforcement." That's where some people lost perspective of what the initial intent was of the whole outlaw lifestyle. It seemed more military, like an army fighting another army. Christie was a Hells Angels leader for 35 years out of a 40-year membership. He was drawn to the outlaw biker lifestyle as a kid in the mid-1950s when he first saw a long-haired, denim-jacketed biker riding through the streets without a care in the world. Christie described that moment as life-changing. What truly fueled his interest, however, was an incident during high school when his principal accused him of cheating because he scored highly on an IQ test. Christie, who did poorly in school, thought, "If this is a polite society, no thank you," as he left the principal's office. After high school, Christie joined the Marine Corps. When he was discharged, he bought a motorcycle and started hanging out with other biker groups, such as the Satan Slaves and Question Marks, though his ultimate dream was to join the Hells Angels. By 1976, Christie had become a full-patch member, and soon after, he rose in rank, founding the Ventura, California chapter in 1978 and even carrying the Olympic torch during the 1984 Los Angeles Games. Despite being a high-ranking member, Christie also worked for the Department of Defense. In 1978, his co-workers discovered he was a Hells Angels leader, a fact that came to light during a brutal conflict with a rival group involving fights, shootings, and bombings, which led to his resignation. Trouble followed Christie. He was later charged with orchestrating a murder-for-hire plot involving a leader of the Mexican mafia prison gang. While in prison, Christie learned that rival clubs did not fight each other behind bars, which motivated him to push for peace on the streets. By the time he was acquitted in 1987, Christie had already started negotiating peace between rival motorcycle clubs. His efforts seemed successful until the 2002 Laughlin River Run, an annual motorcycle rally in Nevada, where a brawl between the Mongols and Hells Angels left 3 people dead. By 2011, the Hells Angels were embroiled in conflicts with nearly every major outlaw motorcycle club and law enforcement. Christie wanted the wars to end, but others did not share his vision. "I felt that groups were fracturing off, doing their own thing, if you will. It was tough," he said. "I decided that if I stayed in the club, it would strictly be ego-driven. I didn't want to be the guy who used to be a Hells Angels leader." In 2011, Christie made his decision to leave. He walked into a club meeting, announced his departure, removed his patches, and laid them on the table. His final words to his former club members were, "We have become the people that we rebelled against. And I'm gone." While Christie argued that he followed protocols and formally quit the club, it appeared that attempting to leave was a mistake. He was soon accused of being an informant, and his status was changed to out bad, meaning he was no longer in good standing with the Hells Angels and could not have any relations or contact with other members. In essence, he had been excommunicated from the club. Christie claimed he was shamed on social media and faced accusations from people, including strangers. The sense of kinship and community that had initially spurred Christie to join the outlaw biker lifestyle was stripped from him simply because he chose to leave. In an interview, Christie was asked why being out bad still seemed to bother him. His response was, "Being out bad with no contact in the outlaw motorcycle world is like a stigma. They don't want people interacting with you. They don't want people talking to you. Club members who I was friendly with after I left had their memberships in jeopardy if they communicated with me." He continued, "When I left, it kind of reminded me of a divorce. At first, everyone wanted to be amiable. They weren't happy about my decision, but they understood it. As things progressed, it became aggressive, and it was hard to take. The phone rings, and you pick up, and it's one of your former brothers telling you you're no longer a friend to us. That's my whole life because I didn't have many friends outside the club. It was a hard pill to swallow." George Christie wasn't the only one to suffer this tragic fate after leaving the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. "My name is Jay Dobbins. I'm a retired undercover federal agent and I infiltrated the Hells Angels. said Jay Dobbins, who infiltrated the Hells Angels between 2001 and 2003. Dobbins, a former football player and athlete, decided to join the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, ATF, after surviving a critical shooting during an operation in 1987. By 2002, when the war between the Hells Angels and the Mongols was at its peak, federal law enforcement launched an undercover operation called Operation Black Biscuit. Dobbins, posing as a gun runner and debt collector, went by the name Jay Davis, and was known to gang members as Jaybird. Dobbins staged a fake murder to gain the Hells Angels' trust. A law enforcement officer posed as a Mongols biker, covered in lamb blood and brains, and was laid in a shallow grave for photographs and videos. Dobbins mailed a blood-stained Mongols patch to the Hells Angels, impressing the leadership so much that they immediately voted him as a fully patched member of the Mesa, Arizona charter, although they later denied this. Unfortunately, as Dobbins moved up the ranks, the lifestyle began to strain his family life. "I had an argument with my wife. At one point, I came home after being away for an extended period. I walked in like Jaybird Davis walks into my house, and she's like, 'You cannot be gone and come here and treat me and our kids like we're street people.'" Despite acknowledging that the Hells Angels could be dangerous, Dobbins admitted to respecting some members. After his true identity was revealed in 2004, the Hells Angels felt betrayed and directed their threats at his family. Plans to inject him with HIV, gang rape his wife and daughter, and kidnap and murder his son were uncovered. The ATF downplayed the threats, claiming no one had forced Dobbins to go undercover. Even when an arson attack occurred at his Tucson, Arizona home with his family inside, the Bureau didn't take the threat seriously. Though his family survived, their home and belongings were destroyed. Dobbins filed and won a lawsuit against the ATF in 2014. He later wrote a book, No Angel: My Harrowing Undercover Journey to the Inner Circle of the Hells Angels, which became a New York Times bestseller. The book detailed the Hells Angels' investigation and its impact on his career and life. Despite the tragic events following his departure, Dobbins now runs a company focused on law enforcement training. Finally, there is the case of David LaBrava. Unlike others who faced hardship after leaving the Hells Angels, LaBrava left in good standing. Known for his role as Happy Loman in the FX series Sons of Anarchy, LaBrava was a real-life member of the Hells Angels. Initially hired as a technical advisor for the show in 2008 to ensure accurate depictions of a motorcycle club, he was later given a role and portrayed the hitman Happy Loman. LaBrava stayed with the Hells Angels until 2019, when he announced his departure via an Instagram post. "I want to say I am no longer a member of the largest motorcycle club in the world, the Hells Angels MC. The only club I'm a member of now is the human race," he wrote. He added that it was his own decision to leave and that he was no longer a patch holder, considering himself a civilian. Unlike others, LaBrava's exit was amicable, and he has had no negative experiences with the club since. Non-bikers might not understand the allure of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club, but motorcycle enthusiasts are often in awe of the club, eager to join. This respect is linked to the club's storied history. According to the Hells Angels official website, the first club was founded on March 17, 1948, in Fontana, San Bernardino, California. Before then, various motorcycle clubs existed independently. Otto Friedli, a World War II veteran, was credited with founding the club after breaking away from the Pissed Off Bastards Motorcycle Club due to a feud with a rival gang. Another theory suggests that the Hells Angels was founded on November 15, 1951, by Dick White in San Bernardino. White was said to be a member of the Redlands Road Runners. The club attributes its name to Arvid Olsen, an acquaintance of the founders who served in the Hells Angel Squadron of the Flying Tigers during World War II. The club's official colors, red and white, and its charter, allegedly drawn up in 1950, reflect this heritage. Chapters began to emerge across California, operating independently. The San Francisco chapter formed in 1954, followed by North Sacramento in 1956. Sonny Barger took over leadership from Friedli and created the Oakland chapter in 1957, uniting the chapters under common bylaws. The Hells Angels expanded beyond California, opening an international chapter in New Zealand in 1961. On July 30, 1969, 2 London chapters were formed, and by 1973, they merged into the London Charter. Canada followed in 1977 with a chapter in Montreal, expanding to other parts of Quebec. However, the Hells Angels didn't quite succeed in taking over the Quebec biking scene without interference, as there was a violent turf war that left over 160 dead, 300 injured, and over 100 bikers incarcerated. By the end of the 70s, the club already had charters in Australia, and in 1984, Rio de Janeiro had its chapter, making it the first South American country with a HAMC charter. By 1993, the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club had spread across continents and was launched in Johannesburg, South Africa. Turkey became the first Muslim country to have a Hells Angels chapter in 2009. Now, the club has a membership of over 6,467 chapters across 59 countries, making it the largest motorcycle club in the world. However, there was still a veil of mystery over the club, as many from the outside weren't quite sure what went on within. Sometimes, the Hells Angels are depicted as free-spirited men bound by brotherhood and loyalty. On the other hand, they are also depicted as a violent criminal gang, and the murder of an 18-year-old concertgoer by one of their members didn't help this reputation. Hells Angels members were essentially known as drug addicts and barroom fighters. However, law enforcement and intelligence agencies like the United States Department of Justice, the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Criminal Intelligence Service Canada, and even Europol all considered the Hells Angels an organized crime syndicate. Although the Hells Angels claim not to be a racially segregated club, members are often white men. According to Sonny Barger in a 2000 BBC interview, the club as a whole is not racist, but we probably have enough racist members that no black guy is going to get in it. He also said, if you're a motorcycle rider and you're white, you want to join the Hells Angels. If you're black, you want to join the East Bay Dragons. That's how it is, whether anyone likes it or not. We don't have no blacks, and they don't have no whites. While Barger claims the Hells Angels weren't racist, a 1983 incident proved otherwise. The Satan's Angels Motorcycle Club in Vancouver had a black member before it decided to merge with the Hells Angels in 1983. However, the San Francisco and Anchorage chapters threatened to expel the Vancouver chapter when they learned there was a black member. The issue was only resolved when the man decided to change his nationality to Hawaiian. In another case, a chapter in Windsor, England, was only granted official status in 1985 after its only black member had died in police custody. In their support, an African-American biker group known as the Chosen Few Motorcycle Club stated in a 1996 Ebony article that they didn't perceive any racial animosity from members of the Hells Angels. They also said they allowed members of the Hells Angels into their territory, where everyone parties and gets together. The Hells Angels echoed this, stating, "We don't have any Negro members," but maintained that it was because no black individuals had sought membership. It is unclear why many people joined the Hells Angels, but one common factor seems to be a sense of community. In the case of former leader George Christie, he had been drawn by the free-spiritedness of the members and wanted to be part of this close-knit community of bikers. Undercover agent Jay Dobbins also hinted at this as one of the reasons why he respected members of the club. In a law enforcement conference in El Paso, Dobbins said that the Hells Angels, even with their fearsome reputations, offered members a sense of belonging in society. "You can be, in essence, an unimportant, unknown person," Dobbins said. "When you join one of those gangs and they put that patch on your back, all of a sudden people are paying attention to you. People are buying you drinks, people are giving you drugs, women want to put their arm around your shoulder, you're intimidating, you scare people, and to some people, that's intoxicating," he said. Therefore, it is little wonder why George Christie appeared slightly hurt by this loss of community when he was declared out bad by the club. Another thing that stands out about the Hells Angels is how seriously they expect loyalty from members. Christie appeared to have betrayed the club by leaving, and they made sure he paid for this by not only isolating him from the community but also ensuring the general public saw him in a negative light. He even went on to serve prison time for crimes he had committed earlier, 3 years after he left the Hells Angels. The same thing played out with Dobbins when he was revealed to be an undercover agent. The threats were just a way for the club to show their disappointment at the betrayal. Despite these acts unveiling the dark side of the Hells Angels, they maintain that they are not a criminal or violent organization. Members of the club continue to assert that they are only a group of motorcycle enthusiasts from all over the world who want to ride motorcycles together and organize social events. They insist that crimes committed by any member of the Hells Angels are the sole responsibility of the parties involved and not the club as a whole. Even though the Hells Angels insist on being a social group, there are several instances that have shown the violent nature of the club. First is the tragic case of Meredith Curly Hunter Jr., the 18-year-old American who was stabbed to death by a member of the Hells Angels at the 1969 Altamont Free concert. What makes the death of Meredith Hunter most unfortunate was that the incident was caught on camera and became a central scene in the documentary Gimme Shelter by the Maysles brothers. 18-year-old Hunter was a bubbly teen from Berkeley, California, known for his flashy dress and hard-to-miss afro. In 1969, he attended the infamous Altamont Free concert with his white, blonde girlfriend, a friend, and his girlfriend, traveling from Berkeley to the event. His sister, Dixie, had warned him not to attend, as racism was still prevalent in the outer reaches of Alameda County. However, Hunter shrugged it off but armed himself with a .22 Smith & Wesson revolver just in case he needed protection. It's important to note that the unfortunate incident at the Altamont Free concert could have been avoided had the event been well planned. There were hundreds of thousands of people at the venue, and the stage was set so low that the crowd pressed in, making the stage look small and uncomfortable. Members of the Hells Angels present at the concert saw this and took advantage of the situation, offering to prevent artists from being approached by overzealous fans who attempted to get on the stage. All they needed in exchange for this service was $500 worth of beer. They parked their motorcycles in front of the stage and ensured no one tried to get close. By the time the Rolling Stones mounted the stage later that night, the crowd had become restless and was pressing on the stage. The Hells Angels, already drunk, began throwing their empty beer cans at the restless crowd, which further increased the tension in the air. The lead singer, Mick Jagger, had to pause and speak to the crowd, urging them to calm down and stop pushing. "I can't do any more than just ask you, beg you," he said. "Just to keep it together, you can do it. It's within your power. Everyone, Hells Angels, everybody, let's just keep ourselves together." Still, the crowd pressed on, and Hunter, with his bright lime green suit, could be spotted in the crowd. After a few minutes of calm, the band started performing again. This time, Hunter climbed up a speaker box next to the stage. He then got into a scuffle with the Hells Angels on guard and was chased back into the crowd, where 4 other angels descended on him. After a few minutes, Hunter, who had been high on drugs, angrily returned to the front of the stage. He was so furious that his girlfriend, Patty Bredhoft, tearfully begged him to move farther back into the crowd with her. From the footage captured, Hunter was seen suddenly lunging at someone in the crowd, drawing what appeared to be a revolver, and pointing it in the air. Then, a man wearing a Hells Angels uniform is seen rushing at the teenager with his hand raised, holding what was later identified as a knife. The Hells Angels member, identified as Alan Passaro, proceeded to stab Hunter twice. By the time Hunter's body was recovered, he had been stabbed 5 times in the upper back and was stomped upon by other Hells Angels members. The footage then cuts to Hunter's girlfriend crying at the sight of her boyfriend's body being wrapped up by medical examiners at the scene. In total, 4 people died at the concert, 2 by a hit-and-run car accident and 1 by an LSD-induced drowning in an irrigation canal. The stabbing of Meredith Hunter gave the Hells Angels a bad reputation as a violent group, and this was worsened after Alan Passaro, the member who had stabbed Hunter, was acquitted of the crime on grounds of self-defense. This was just one of the many instances where the Hells Angels proved to be deadly. J. Dobbins, in an interview, also talked about how a woman had been murdered by the Hells Angels in Mesa, Arizona. The Hells Angels in Mesa had murdered a woman, an innocent woman. They was in their clubhouse, right? Yeah, they basically recruited her off the street to come to a party. The party got out of hand. She mouthed off in the wrong place at the wrong time. "Man, you don't talk on these dudes in their clubhouse, and you don't insult them." He then narrated what the club did to her. She took a beating in the Mesa clubhouse. They beat her down and then they stuffed her in the trunk of a car and drove her from Mesa out to Apache Junction, Arizona, which is further east, and cut her head off. These notable events showed how brutal the Hells Angels could be when faced with what was perceived to be disrespect or even betrayal. No matter how they tried to assert their innocence, the Hells Angels have created a bad reputation among law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Their members are constantly caught up in robberies, extortion, drug dealing, murder, gun running, and even prostitution operations. The truth is, you never can know what goes on behind the scenes of this motorcycle club unless you join, and clearly, becoming a member comes with a heavy price. Unless you are bold enough, the tragic fate of leaving the Hells Angels can be greatly terrifying, and if you are not careful, it can cost all that you hold dearly. When a prospect becomes a full-fledged member, they get a vest with the famous logo and name on the back. If one of the bikers gets arrested, he'll hand his vest to a fellow member to avoid tainting it in jail. If they get hurt and need an emergency procedure, they'll do whatever possible to prevent the vest from being cut or torn off. They have a dress code. The guidelines on this one vary a bit from chapter to chapter. Some are not even allowed to wear shorts, no matter how hot it gets. The most common are charters who wear all black. Some allow blue jeans and camouflage patterns. The color and design codes can help distinguish which charter they belong to. There's an order that they ride in. The road captain and charter president remain at the front of the group. From there, the bikers align based on seniority and rank. The older members will stay closer to the front, followed by newer members and ending with prospects in the back. They all pull over together. If one of them gets pulled over by a cop, they all stop. A bit intimidating for the cop, I'm sure. It signifies how the brotherhood is linked like family. If you mess with one Hells Angel, you mess with them all. They can't work for a prison. Given the Hells Angels' history with law enforcement, they aren't allowed to work for a prison while in the group. Members also cannot be police officers due to the conflict of interest. The group stands for freedom in the sense that they run by their own rules, so prison guards and law enforcement officers are out of the question. You can't share information about fellow members. If a member were to rat out a fellow brother, they could expect to get kicked out of the group. The Hells Angels website clearly states, "We do not answer questions about members, not even missing ones. Once a Hells Angel, always a Hells Angel. Once you're an official Hells Angel, there's no backing out. Members don't retire, and the only time they exit the group is if they're kicked out for breaking a rule. Your charter essentially becomes a second family. When one of them passes away, everyone unites to honor the memory of their fallen brother. No talking to the media. Since the Hells Angels are very secretive in their activities, none of them are allowed to talk to the media. Harleys only. To be a Hells Angel, you must own a Harley Davidson. Riding only Harleys is a Hells Angels tradition that runs along the same lines as the sacred vest. It holds value because it's a part of what makes them who they are. They ride thousands of miles a year together. According to their website, the Hells Angels ride around 12,000 miles together every year. While Hells Angels are like brothers, their connection is founded on their shared love of motorcycles. They'll happily spend hours on the road. Show up to club events. Members who fail to show up to meetings and hangouts indicate to others that they are missing the point of the club. The Biker Brotherhood is known for having a strict attendance code. Those who continually miss events are seen as disrespectful and are not likely to make it past the hanging around phase of recruitment. It's a brotherhood, not a sisterhood. Hells Angels refers to itself as a brotherhood. Thus, you'll only see men with the death head insignias on their back. Though women aren't technically in the club, they do play a major role in it. Many of the Hells Angels have wives and families. If he's going to be a part of the crew, then his partner has to understand the commitment and be okay with the lifestyle and all that comes with it. The Hells Angels official website attributes the official Death's Head insignia design to Frank Sadalek, past president of the San Francisco charter. The colors and shape of the early-style jacket emblem, before 1953, were copied from the insignias of the 85th Fighter Squadron and the 552nd Medium Bomber Squadron. The Hells Angels have a system of patches similar to military medals. The specific meaning of each patch is not publicly known, but the patches identify each biker's specific or significant actions or beliefs. The official colors of the Hells Angels are red lettering displayed on a white background, hence the club's nickname, the Red and White. The patches are worn on leather or denim jackets and vests. Red and white are also used to display the number 81 on many patches, as in Support 81, Route 81. The 8 and 1 stand for the respective positions in the alphabet of H and D. Friends and supporters of the club use these in deference to club rules, which purport to restrict the wearing of Hells Angels imagery to club members. The diamond-shaped 1%er patch is also used, displaying 1% in red on a white background with a red marrowed border. The term 1%er is said to be a response to the American Motorcyclist Association, AMA, comment on the Hollister incident to the effect that 99% of motorcyclists were law-abiding citizens and 1% were outlaws. The AMA has no record of such a statement and calls this story apocryphal. Most members wear a rectangular patch, again, white background with red letters and a red marrowed border, identifying their respective charter locations. Another similarly designed patch reads, Hells Angels. When applicable, members of the club wear a patch denoting their position or rank within the organization. The patch is rectangular and, like those described above, displays a white background with red letters and a red marrowed border. Some examples of the titles used are President, Vice President, Secretary, Treasurer, and Sergeant at Arms. This patch is usually worn above the charter location patch. Some members also wear an AFFA patch, which stands for Angels Forever, Forever Angels, referring to their lifelong membership in the club. An additional patch worn by select club members consists of 2 Nazi-style SS lightning bolts below the words, Filthy Few. Some law enforcement officials claim that the Filthy Few patch is awarded only to those who have committed or are prepared to commit murder on the club's behalf. Hells Angels have denied this interpretation, however, comparing it instead to a merit badge awarded to those who are the first to arrive at a party and the last to leave. According to reports from law enforcement and prosecutors, another patch similar to the Filthy Few patch is the Di Quialo patch. Di Quialo is a reference to El Diguelo, a bugle call played by the regimental band of Antonio López de Santa Anna's army at the Battle of the Alamo. This patch allegedly signifies that the wearer has fought law enforcement on arrest. There is no common convention as to where the patches are placed on members' jackets/vests. Angels Forever, Forever Angels, is also the club's traditional motto. Other Hells Angels slogans include, When we do right, nobody remembers. When we do wrong, nobody forgets. 3 can keep a secret if 2 are dead. And when in doubt, knock 'em out, which was coined by New York City Charter member Vincent Big Vinny Girolamo. The Hells Angels incorporated in 1966, trademarking the club's name and 4 symbols. The club filed a trademark infringement lawsuit for the first time on October 26, 1989, when the Hells Angels lodged a federal lawsuit in Los Angeles against Concord New Horizons, which produced the film Nom Angels, and against Media Home Entertainment, which distributed the film on video, over infringements on the club's registered trademarks. The suit was settled out of court. According to the Globe and Mail, the Hells Angels considered seeking an injunction to block the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation from broadcasting the miniseries The Last Chapter, because of how closely the biker gang at the center of the series resembled the Hells Angels. Tension filled the air, thick enough to choke on. The Outlaws weren't happy, not one bit, and Mel knew it was only a matter of time before the powder keg exploded. Every day became a waiting game, a test of nerves. Mel's brothers looked to him for guidance and strength, but even he had his doubts and fears. Still, he couldn't show weakness, not now. Mel tightened security, ran drills, and prepared for the worst. But what kept us strong was the unity we had with each other. We had a young crew, me being the youngest, Mel reflected. Most of the guys trained back then. There was no MMA, so we were just up pounding on the bags. You had to make sure you were in shape, but you couldn't be so big that you couldn't fight in a bar. Nothing could have prepared them for what came next. June 13, 1994, was a date that would be etched in blood and fire. The Hells Angels Clubhouse, their sanctuary and home, was reduced to rubble in an instant. 100 pounds of C4 explosives had delivered a message written in destruction. They put 100 pounds of C4 in a car, shaped it, and drove it up. Our clubhouse was on Grand Avenue, a busy street, and it was about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, middle of the week. Traffic was going by and everything. They built the bomb in the trunk of this car. By some miracle, no one was inside when the bomb went off. But the message was crystal clear. This was war. Mel stood in the debris, rage boiling inside him. The next move was his, and it would change everything. Retaliation came swift and merciless. Mel knew the rules, an eye for an eye. But this was beyond that. This was an all-out war. We were doing that tit-for-tat thing, Mel said. It became personal. We were running into each other's bars and doing stuff like that. But then, with the bombings, it turned the game around. That was the first of a few that happened. He gathered his most trusted lieutenants, planning in secret. No half measures, no mercy, no survivors. The streets of Chicago ran red as chaos reigned supreme. Shootings, bombings, brutal beatings, no one was safe. We had no clue, man. These guys were using bombs and remote starts. We didn't know how to do that, so we had to figure it out. We were still trying to run into the bars and fight hand to hand as they were finding us. The cops were overwhelmed, and soon the feds took notice. But Mel couldn't stop, he wouldn't stop. Every attack fueled his rage and determination. In the 90s, it got crazy with the bombings and shootings. It went from playground fights to shooting on motorcycles. We had to keep our guys safe. I have the tombstones tattooed on my arms for the brothers that got killed in that war. When you see a brother you're tight with lying in a casket, and his 16-year-old daughter is saying goodbye and rubbing her father's hair for the last time, it hits different. As the war dragged on, Mel's reputation grew. He was feared on the streets and respected in the underworld, but he was also a prime target for rival gangs and law enforcement alike. The pressure was mounting from all sides. In the midst of the chaos, I never lost sight of my goal, to make the Chicago Hells Angels the most powerful club in the Midwest. But as the body count rose and the feds closed in, I started to wonder if the price of power was too high. I remember standing at the casket with a few brothers, putting his patch over him before we closed it. His daughter's goodbye brought tears to my eyes. I thought, we did this. Our decisions led to this. How do you say, time out, in a war like this? You don't. You just go with the flow and be part of the environment created around you. Little did Mel know, the biggest battle of his life was yet to come, and it wouldn't be fought on the streets but in a courtroom. The war had caught the attention of forces far beyond Chicago, and they were about to bring the full weight of the law down on Mel Chansey and his brothers. Brothers, the fall. Blue lights and sirens pierced the night. The law was closing in. Mel knew it was coming. But when you have 2 bombings on one day, that's something they had never seen before. After we hit their clubhouse, that was the full court press. That's when the government came in and said, hey, no more of this. Violence on violence, biker violence on biker violence, they don't like, but it's passable. But when you start Beirooting the city, they come with the full court press. The feds swarmed everywhere, kicking down doors and making arrests. The magic word was RICO. The club's worst nightmare came to life. At the time, Janet Reno was the U.S. Attorney General. We all knew she was no nonsense. She put a team together and said, get both sides. That's how the RICO investigation started. Put the city on edge. She nicknamed the operation Operation Lucifer and put the full court press on us and the outlaws. In 1997, the first RICO indictments hit, and they targeted the outlaws first. They had them on predicate acts, fighting us, the bombing. The guy who placed the bomb flipped for the government later in life, giving them the full story of what happened. Before the indictment hit the Hells Angels, Mel received a 4-year sentence for beating up a DJ who was abusing his ex-girlfriend. I went to prison in '98 for beating that guy up. Remember Dee's story in the house? I beat the guy who was abusing my ex-girlfriend. I kind of took it to a level, and I got a 4-year sentence for that one. So, I'm in state prison in '98, knowing that the RICO case is being put together against us. I'm hearing the buzz from the streets. with people telling me they're building this RICO case on us. Mel watched his empire crumble as brother turned on brother. One of the Hell's henchmen, who hadn't made it to the angel side, flipped. He was a good friend of Mel's, and Mel didn't know he had turned. Mel was the target. His name was Jim, and the authorities told Jim, "We want Mel." Plea deals and witness protection programs shattered the old code of silence. But Mel wouldn't break. He couldn't. Even as the evidence mounted and the charges piled up, he stood firm, a captain going down with his ship. The trial was a media circus, with Mel at the center. He remained defiant to the end, but the verdict was never really in doubt, guilty on all counts. So, I pled guilty to mail fraud and got 18 months. The day I was released from the state penitentiary, I went into the Sally Port. They switched my handcuffs, and the marshals picked me up and took me to a federal holding facility, then designated me to a federal prison. I really did back-to-back sentences. As they led him away in chains, Mel couldn't help but wonder, was it all worth it? All the blood, all the sacrifice. For what? A patch? A reputation? Or something more, something he couldn't yet see? As Mel's sentence neared its end, a glimmer of hope appeared on the horizon. In late 2000, Mel Chansey walked out of federal prison a free man once more. Chicago's own outlaw motorcycle club, the Hell's Henchmen, was where Mel found his tribe. But respect had to be earned the hard way. They said, the stories. The same guys that showed me how to train heavy and crazy were the same guys that showed me how to do the motorcycle lifestyle. That's how I stepped into that world. He started as a prospect, the lowest of the low, cleaning, running errands, and taking orders from everyone. It wasn't glamorous, but Mel didn't complain. He had something to prove, not just to the club but to himself and the world. "How old are you now?" they asked. I said, "It's only been a year and some change. I'm 19. "Man, you're going to age rough. You look older. You want to come in the club?" "I do." "Okay, come on. Let's make it official. You become an official hang-around and a prospect, and then you get voted for your patch." Yeah, so that's how it happened, and that's what I did. I was very eager. When Mel got into that world, he wanted to learn everything about it. He worked harder, trained harder, fought harder. His fists did the talking, and people started listening. Rivals learned to fear him, and brothers learned to trust him. But in that world comes the nonsense, the violence, the tit-for-tat with other clubs. I was into that part. Those guys showed me the violent side of the lifestyle. Slowly but surely, Mel climbed the ranks of the Hell's Henchmen. The older members watched, sizing him up. Was this kid for real, or just another wannabe? Mel's dedication was put to the test time and time again. He ran errands that often skirted the edge of legality. I would be out every night as a prospect doing all this stuff. I stood watch during deals that I knew better than to ask about. And when rival gangs came knocking, I was always first in line to defend my brothers. "Learned it fast and I watched it," Mel said. "I watched how some of these guys came right in, and when it was time to fight and throw hands, there was no question about it." Finally, after months of grueling tests and trials, the moment Mel had been waiting for arrived. They called him to the front of the clubhouse. The air was thick with anticipation. The president, a grizzled old biker with more scars than teeth, looked Mel up and down. For a moment, the world stood still. Then, with a gruff nod, he handed Mel his colors. Mel Chansey was now a full-patch member of the Hell's Henchmen. "I got my patch right before I was 21, Mel recalled.